Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: the clock is ticking for TikTok's time in the U.S., a large number of its users flocking to another Chinese app called RedNote. More on the controversies around it and why it's topping App Store charts. The FBI removing Chinese malware from over 4,000 U.S. computers. Details on what systems were affected. Missouri's lawsuit against the Chinese Communist Party getting a date for trial after 4 years. Why the Show Me state is bent on holding China accountable. And one of President Biden's last acts to counter China, Washington is making moves on two fronts, preventing China from helping Russia and keeping the Chinese military from getting advanced U.S. microchips. TikTok users are flooding Chinese social media app RedNote just days before a potential ban could remove TikTok from U.S. users' lives. Some of them have come up with a creative way to describe the trend, calling themselves TikTok refugees. RedNote saw its U.S. downloads skyrocket nearly 200% last week, according to database Sensor Tower. The Chinese app also topped the ranks of free downloads on both Apple and Google's app stores in the U.S. Another app called Lemonade trails behind RedNote in second place. The app works almost the same as RedNote, but is predominantly English language versus RedNote's default Chinese. Lemonade also shares the same Chinese parent company, ByteDance, as TikTok. Built with features similar to both Instagram and Pinterest, users can post photos and short videos on RedNote. It also has chat functions and its own online shopping site. As the app's non-Chinese base grows, Chinese users are telling American newcomers about what could be considered wrong under the Chinese Communist Party's censorship rules. For example, stay away from sensitive topics the regime considers sensitive, like Taiwan, the Uyghur ethnic group, and the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. RedNote has already faced criticism from users for strict censorship rules. The platform reportedly banned over 1.25 million accounts a few weeks ago. Right now, its ties with the Chinese Communist Party are facing scrutiny as more Americans flock to the app. RedNote is owned by a Shanghai-based company, and all of its data is stored in mainland China. The app is reportedly backed by Chinese tech giant Tencent. The Pentagon recently blacklisted Tencent for its alleged ties to the Chinese military. What's more, the app's Chinese name, Xiaohongshu, means the little red book. The term refers to quotations from Mao Zedong, former head of the Chinese Communist Party. Under him, communists took over China and established the CCP.
If Chinese owned and run and accessed apps are a problem, why was RedNote even on? It's an even more Chinese app than the Chinese app we're all worried about right now, right?
With English language content flooding the app more than ever before, a Chinese user complained that the app's regulators made her wait 2 hours to check and approve her English video, something she's never experienced. Because of RedNote's popularity inside China, the regime has kept a close eye on the social media for years. According to Chinese media reports, Chinese authorities held talks with its executives after seeing content that violated Beijing's interests. One of Washington's top jobs is open, and Senator Marco Rubio is up to bat. The longtime Florida lawmaker is testifying before the Senate, seeking confirmation as incoming President Trump's new Secretary of State. During his hearing, Rubio called China the, quote, most potent and dangerous near-peer adversary this nation has ever confronted. Watch.
We welcome the Chinese Communist Party into the global order, and they took advantage of all of its benefits. And they ignored all of its obligations and responsibilities. Instead, they have repressed and lied and cheated and hacked and stolen their way into global superpower status, and they have done so at our expense.
President-elect Trump's nominee for CIA director also went before the Senate Intelligence Committee Wednesday. John Ratcliffe served as National Intelligence Director in 2020. He said the U.S. faces an array of threats from adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the latest on his confirmation hearing.
Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe told senators that he believes the U.S. faces the most challenging national security threats in American history. The nominee for Director of the Central Intelligence Agency promised he was up to the job. The former DNI chief pointed to the Chinese Communist Party, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
We will collect intelligence, especially human intelligence, in every corner of the globe, no matter how dark or difficult. We will produce insightful, objective, all-source analysis, never allowing political or personal biases to cloud our judgment or infect our products.
Ratcliffe also vowed to pursue a policy of meritocracy at the agency.
I will unapologetically empower the most talented, hardest working, and most courageous risk takers and innovators to protect the American people and advance America's interests. And I will not tolerate anything or anyone that distracts from our mission.
Senate Intelligence Chairman Tom Cotton said the committee will likely vote on Ratcliffe's nomination Monday. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The FBI and DOJ have removed a source of Chinese malware from over 4,000 U.S.-based computers and networks. Court documents say the malware appears to have interacted with over 45,000 IP addresses in the U.S. The Justice Department announced the operation Tuesday, saying the action was court-authorized. Court documents say Chinese authorities paid hackers to develop this special version of malware called Plug X. It was designed to steal information from the computers it accessed. The malware has impacted Windows-based computer systems in at least 5 federal districts, including the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Investigators say the hacking operation also targeted Chinese dissidents, plus governments in Europe and Asia, including Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, India, and the Philippines. The Justice Department said owners of the infected computers are typically unaware of the situation. This comes after a separate Chinese hacking group infiltrated AT&T and Verizon networks. A top White House cyber official said these hackers tracked the locations of millions of Americans and recorded their phone calls. Now an update on Missouri's lawsuit against the Chinese Communist Party. The state attorney general said Tuesday that the court has set a date for trial, though he didn't provide that date.
Missouri was the first state in the U.S. to sue the Chinese regime over COVID-19. Its former AG filed the lawsuit 4 years ago, accusing Beijing of lying to the world about the dangers of COVID-19, silencing whistleblowers, and doing little to stop the spread of the disease. The former AG said this led to COVID-related deaths in Missouri, families separated from dying loved ones, and small businesses shutting their doors. A court later tossed out the case, saying a sovereign foreign entity can't be sued in American courts. But one claim in the suit was allowed to advance. That's the allegation the Chinese Communist Party hoarded masks and other protective gear during the pandemic.
Washington closing in on Russian efforts to evade U.S. sanctions. The U.S. slapped sanctions on 9 Chinese entities Wednesday. The Treasury said they've been working with Russian companies to set up platforms that would facilitate cross-border payments for sensitive goods. All this under the guidance of Russian and Chinese officials. The U.S. Treasury said China is Russia's largest supplier of dual-use items, meaning items that have both civilian and military applications. The U.S. adding to efforts to keep advanced semiconductors away from Beijing and the Chinese military. The Commerce Department updated export control rules for advanced computing microchips Wednesday. The change requires foundries making those chips to scrutinize customers more closely. Otherwise, they'll face further-reaching license rules. What's more, foundries have to be more diligent in their reporting. That's when it comes to customers that have the potential to divert semiconductor parts to China. This comes after blacklisted Chinese tech giant Huawei was able to obtain microchips made by Taiwan's TSMC. Besides the rules for chip makers, the U.S. also added 16 entities to a blacklist, including an AI company called SoftGo. The Commerce Department said these entities help Beijing advance chip production. The agency added that the Chinese military could use these semiconductors to improve the speed and accuracy of their decision-making, which poses a threat to U.S. national security. China could also use the advanced tech for radar, jamming, and electronic warfare. Beijing reacted to the new U.S. sanctions within hours. China said later on Wednesday that it had blacklisted 4 American companies over arms sales to Taiwan. Those firms include Pacific Rim Defense and Summit Technologies. Beijing's label blocks those companies from exporting to and importing from China. Coming up, U.S. companies rushing to stockpile goods from China before Trump takes office. That's with his promise of 60% tariffs looming on the horizon. And China officially kicks off its travel rush for the Lunar New Year holiday. Citizens are set to make 9 billion trips nationwide. This as several viruses are spreading in the country, putting China's neighbors on alert. That's next after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The U.S. National Security Advisor has passed the baton on to his successor. Jake Sullivan spoke with President-elect Trump's advisor-designate Mike Waltz Tuesday. The two met at the United States Institute of Peace in Washington, D.C.
I would say this particular transition, it's especially important that there be deep consultation and a smooth handoff. Because just in the period of this transition, we've seen the fall of Assad, we've seen the declaration of martial law in Korea, we have an active ongoing negotiation for a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza.
Sullivan noted that the incoming administration needs to focus on long-term strategic competition with China.
For me, the critical thing is in the midst of dealing with immediate crises, we can't take our eye off the ball of the long-term strategic competition with the People's Republic of China, because China is the one country with both the ambition and the potential capacity to really compete with us across all dimensions. We have not faced a challenge like that in a very long time, perhaps ever.
Waltz expressed a desire to speed up the delivery of weapons purchased by Taiwan. These weapons would help Taiwan defend itself against China in the worst-case scenario if war broke out.
The Porcupine Taiwan, we have over a $20 billion backlog of things that they paid for and that we need to work hard to free up and have them get what they paid for as a deterrent measure.
Sullivan also raised concerns that Iran could reconsider its stance on using nuclear weapons. U.S. imports from China finished 2024 strong. Companies stockpiled shipments of toys, furniture, and more ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House.
U.S. imports from China finished the year strong. Companies have stockpiled shipments of toys, furniture, and more ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House. He plans to impose new tariffs that could revive a trade war between the two countries. Trump has threatened to slap tariffs of 10 to 60% on goods from China. During his first term, he mainly targeted Chinese parts and components. Economists and trade experts predict his next wave of tariffs could apply to finished goods. Beijing said Monday December exports surged to record levels. Officials cited concerns about escalating trade protectionism in the US and Europe. Trade data showed goods from China landing at US seaports in December rose by 14.5% year over year. Some US retailers may have rushed in goods to avoid the cost hit from potential new tariffs. But the analysis is complicated. Teasing out the true effect of overall import gains is difficult because importers keep such data private. Resilient US shoppers have also fueled demand, while some importers brought in safety stocks to protect against disruptions from Houthi attacks on shipping near the Suez Canal trade shortcut.
President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Is he fit for the job? That's what the Senate Armed Services Committee sought to find out Tuesday during his confirmation hearing. We spoke to Stephen Yates, former Deputy National Security Advisor at the White House, for his take. And it's not just the domestic or bureaucratic. We also have the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, Europe, Russia, and Ukraine, rising tensions in Asia. What do you see Hegseth bringing as Defense Secretary if he's confirmed to all of that?
Well, first, I think it matters a great deal that we get with all these things inside the Pentagon and inside the government to have revival, renewal in America. It makes us a more credible partner and power. It makes the options we have to contain and deter and maybe even at times confuse the non-status quo powers or our enemies in different regions. It makes those options a lot safer and more likely to succeed. So I think when it comes to his immediate challenge, he's going to have to try to make sure that we're delivering the material that has been promised to allies that are under threat. That would include some arms sales to Taiwan that were supposed to be delivered in 2023 and are still awaiting delivery, even though they've been paid for. When it comes to the commitment to Israel and replenishing supplies after that conflict has gone on longer than I think people had hoped, and then readjustment to what our relationship is going to be with NATO, I think is just a continuing evolution of the conversation that began in Trump 1.0. And I think that we've got some new allies in that conversation in other parts of Europe that recognize they want to step up too.
And how do you think adversarial countries like China would view someone like Hegseth? Can he achieve that deterrence that he's speaking of?
He can, but he does not have to step into that role in the sense that it is all about the commander-in-chief and his command presence with his counterparts in these other countries. President Trump will open up to dialogue in several areas of the world. That doesn't mean concession. It means taking temperature, maybe trying to influence and shape things before having to engage in tough competitive talks or demonstrations of deterrent. And so I think that it's really going to be the Trump administration, and Pete's job as secretary is going to be to really revive morale and revive the substantive strategic weight of the Pentagon. Sure, there'll be dialogue with counterparts. Will remain to be seen whether we have military-to-military dialogue with China. It's not something I think is necessary. I think we speak much louder with our actions and support for our allies than those one-to-one conversations have bilaterally. But those will definitely be high on the list of making sure we have detection, deterrent, and I think a resilient force that is a good partner and ally.
Stephen Yates, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.